Mic muted. Welcome to another episode of Objective Deconstruction. Me, Mr. Nice Guy, Brother Afro Agnostics, where we objectively deconstruct issues and get down to the white meat, so to speak. Today we're going to be talking about the Republicans versus Democrats. And again, this is not going to be a hit piece on either. Neither of us are Republicans or Democrats. But we do want to address the concept about them being the same. Spoiler alert, they are not. But, that having been said, what's going on with you, Brother Afro Agnostics?
Man, you laid it down perfectly like a carpet, man. I like that intro. Definitely, man, I want to get down to some of the white meat and in a very simple, short way, in the barbershop way, because we have to counteract some of this I would say disinformation and misinformation that's out there regarding these things.
Now, I'm apologizing for the dog in the background. These are my neighbor's dogs, and a lot of stuff is going on. But again, a lot of times we get this argument, about the Republicans, the Democrats. It really doesn't matter, or they're talking about this saying that Black people are way too loyal to the Democrats or whatever. And we just want to squash all that stuff. None of this is about loyalty. All this is about policies. And the reality is the parties have basically, represented one position, and then a lot of it's flipped to different positions. So just as the parties' policies are fluid, that's just going to be the same way as where Black people tend to vote. Again, it's not a function about loyalty. It's a function about voting your interests. Because again, even though we're not a monolith, we're not stupid. You know what I'm saying? We understand if someone gives us this option and says, we're going to debate, we're going to give you this, we're going to fight for this, we're going to fight for this, we're going to fight for this, and the other person says, no, we're going to fight for that, we're going to fight for that, we're going to fight for that. You can evaluate those and figure that which one seems like the better option to you. So it's an insult to Black people to act like we don't know what the hell we're doing when we tend to vote in a particular manner. Brother Afro Agnostic, what you got to say?
Yeah, you really hit the nail on the head, especially when you said the part about people feeling that Black people are way too loyal to the Democratic Party. It's interesting how that gets focused on us, but the Democratic Party has never got the white majority since the civil rights legislation in the 60s. So, the question is never on them. Why are they so, quote unquote, loyal to the Republican Party? It's just we can ask that question in reverse. And I think by doing so, you get a bigger picture of what happened and how the party's values and interests change. And as Winston Churchill said, people don't have permanent allies, they have permanent interests. And I don't know, it's applicable to us. I mean, we're not stupid. You know what I'm saying? We looking at the Republican Party, we can see this shit is racist.
Yeah, exactly. Because again, and I've always said that one thing that I've respected about, I understand that you're more liberal, so you know what I'm saying. You're definitely on the more the left to the side, where I've always had a certain degree of respect for the Democratic Republic machine together, because I felt like, look, one party is more idealistic, you know what I'm saying? And the other side is more practical. And I always felt like you need a combination of those things to make best decisions. Because sometimes you can have a great idea and concept, and then you follow up with an actuality, and it turns out to be a counterproductive methodology. So the bottom line is, I always felt like this yin and yang pull, that at least it was something to basically come out with a better result, as opposed to just letting one party just do whatever the hell that they want. Sadly, now there doesn't seem to be much cooperation. I mean, it really seems largely an all or other. You know what I'm saying? And to me, that's getting away from at least the practical way that I saw it, at least perceived it, in my youth, so to speak.
Yeah. It's so funny that I can remember in elementary school when Ronald Reagan, the attempted assassination on Ronald Reagan. And I'm from Detroit, and my classroom was all Black. And I can just remember us like celebrating when we heard that Ronald Reagan, the attempt assassination on his life. And that kind of we were not deep in political thought. We were third grade, fourth grade, but the general sentiments and how Black people feel, that does filter down. It gets caught up into the the osmosis, the culture, and there's an intuitive thing going on too. But I think part of this is kind of rooted in the French, people not understanding that politics exist on the spectrum, and that kind of our thinking about the political spectrum comes from the French Revolution. And I think if you understand what happened at the tennis court, the people's assemblies, what happened was the people who wanted to support the monarchy to keep things the same, the conservatives, they sat on the right side of the king's throne. And the people who wanted to at least make it a parliamentary monarchy, they sat on the left. They were they were more progressive, so to speak. So this is, you're always going to have this political spectrum. Some people want to keep things the same. Some people want to change things. And the parties change, just like individuals change. They change on that political spectrum. People always bring up, slavery or Civil War. Yeah, the Republicans represented our interests. They were on the right side of history and justice at that moment. You know what I'm saying? But things have changed. The Democrats were on the other side. But things don't stay the same. Things are in flux and they're fluid.
Yeah, let's just talk a little bit about that Southern switch that for some reason a lot of people on the right want to deny that it even happened. I mean, if you understand that just the whole concept, the Civil War, you had the North versus the South. The North was largely Republican.
No, well, this is on the Southern. Are you going back to because
Southern? I'm setting up the Southern switch. So my bottom line is saying that I'm showing you where the parties were, so we can see that there was clearly a switch because we're going to show you where they happened after the switch that we talk about. But again, so you're talking about the North that was on the side of against slavery, you know what I'm saying, versus the South that was pro-slavery. So you had the North was predominantly Republican. But then you had that time somewhere around the civil rights movement where basically now it's the Democrats that are ones that are basically supporting the civil rights movement and stuff like that. And then the South is now Republican. So you can't deny that there wasn't a switch when basically these two completely different locations were basically predominated by different parties. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's just that it happened. And just like they did, again, your loyalty is never going to be to a party, or perhaps it shouldn't be. Your loyalty is to policy. And what at the end of the day, you're rocking with the policy that makes sense to you. And that's what happened. I don't fault Republicans for championing Republican policy. What I will challenge it on its face, whether it's righteous or not, especially particularly how it impacts Black people. Because again, when I think about, like, for example, during the Black Lives Matter, and we always got to distinguish, look, there was Black Lives Matter, the movement, and then there was Black Lives Matter, the organization. Most Black people had nothing to do with the organization, had philosophical differences. What you were supporting was just the concept, the notion that Black lives do matter, and that movement that a lot of Black people got behind. So when you had cops killing people incorrectly, you know what I'm saying, mistakenly, whatever, negligently, whatever. The bottom line is we wanted them to be held accountable. The people on the other side, they didn't even care about that. All they wanted to do was protect the cops. That is an example of not being in our interest. So when you say that one side leans on this other, and one side, that was a clear evidence of an example of that. So, So
I think it's important to realize that people say that we switch. We did switch. Black people were predominantly Republican up into the 50s and the 60s, and but white people switched as well, and we switched for almost like inverse reasons. The majority of white people before, I believe that you can fact check this, the audience, or if you want to do it, nice guy, really quick. I can probably do it too, but the majority of white people were Democrats before 1965. After 1965, the majority are Republicans. The white people the Democratic Party has never won a white majority since the Civil Rights Movement, since the Civil Rights Acts, never won a white majority. So I think that says a lot. Black people joined the Democrats for the same reason white people joined the Republicans in mass. How can you criticize one without criticizing the other?
So again, it comes down to policy.
If that's your basis, you want to argue, loyalty and all this.
So and we also want to distinguish, some of these type of policies, because again, this ain't a hit piece on the Republicans. You're never going to get that from me, because I definitely considered myself more of a conservative. I considered that previously. Now I would argue that maybe I'm not. I'm definitely not what people identify as a progressive. But at the end of the day, my brother Alpha Ignacio goes, look, you either want to keep doing what you're doing, or you want to do something else. I'm a proponent of something else. I think that what's been done is not good enough, and we need to do better. So that, by definition, forces me to the left, by definition. You know what I'm saying? So even though I'm a religious person, even though I am fundamentally conservative, when it comes to just liberalities, basic rights, and just how you treat people, from a decent standpoint, to me, it's very clear. You're
the typical black person. Black people are religiously conservative but politically liberal. That's part of what makes you black.
Yeah. So again, and we're not a monolith, but we do see we're the most united on that front.
Yeah, I would say we're the closest to being a monolith.
Yeah, because people talk about that. People that black people need to get together. Black people, if only black people could do this. Reality is that black people are largely together on the most of this stuff. I understand we're not together how we maybe could be or should be, but compared wise to other races and stuff like that, you'd be surprised to find out statistically that we definitely are together more. You know what I'm saying? More consistent.
And when they say that, they don't say anything that measurable that we can use to compare. But I think one good obvious measurable is our involvement in political parties. We're like 80-85% one party. Everybody else is split down the line. That's divisive. You know what I'm saying? They have, we talk about the differences in the party. So that means they have different values. That's an example of disunity. Black people have a lot of the shared more common values in common. That's an example of the unity that we decry we don't have. What we lack is organization, not unity.
And I just want to give you an example of, this whole switching of policies, because it's not just a function. We talked about the Civil War, and then we talked about the Civil Rights movement, which are, pretty far apart. But I mean, just in this one example right here, we talked about when Michelle Obama was institutionalizing a healthy program in students and kids and stuff like that. I believe that they were, trying to put more fruits. You were in the education, basically field, so you probably know more about this, exactly what you did. But it was definitely
I can't remember her program, but I implemented it. Yeah, it was in the early days of I guess computer use. She had a website. She had a friendly curriculum for for different, I think, K through 12. And
but
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, but you can say enforcing what? Go ahead, enforcing.
Yeah, unfortunately, at this school, they had an old etiquette room with a kitchen, so we got a chance to prepare some healthy meals, give student visuals. Since I'm science background, I can show what so many grams of sugar actually looks like, how much sugar intake is in this soda, and stuff like that. So it was a good program. Students learn, the basics about nutrition, macronutrients, how to prepare healthy meals. They had they moved away from the food pyramid, and they had a food plate that was easier to understand for the kids to really grasp. And it was dope. I like it.
And my point is that when she did this program, there was a lot of resistance on the right, because it felt like, who is she to tell our kids what to eat, blah, 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 etc. Now we got RFK Jr. basically doing the same thing on a similar type of thing. And now it's like an aha moment. Like, now it's Maha, make America healthy again. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So this is an example of how literally you flip on positions over a short period of time. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So again, really at the end of the day, what we're going to do is champion our policies. I don't care who suggests them. He talks about no color dye and stuff in food. I love that. I'm all for it. I'm part of it, I'm colorblind. But my point is that, why do I care about putting coloring in my food? understanding that everything that you consume is going to have some type of impact on you. I don't need anything extra. I want less ingredients, impactful ingredients. I don't just need a whole bunch of extra, fabricated stuff. So, I mean, I support that 100%. Go ahead.
I sort of support it too. We can get into that, but that may deviate too much.
Yeah, well, again, I'm just saying, but my point is that at the end of the day, it's about policies. I know that when the whole Black Lives Matter stuff, when they were talking about if you just obey, if you just cooperate, and again, after a fashion, I definitely don't believe in being surly and combative with police, people in authority. It's just not going to serve your interests, especially when they have weapons and you don't, especially when it's life-threatening. The smart thing to do is to basically do the thing that's going to increase the chances that you walk out alive. But still, again, talk about what your responsibility is doing as far as, what's going to serve your interests. We still got to put pressure on the other people. It's their responsibility. You're a cop. You know what I'm saying? It's not a free pass just to do whatever. The bottom line is that if you are trained a certain way and you violate that training, then you should be held accountable. It's okay. It's okay. People make mistakes, but when you make mistakes, you should be accountable. And that's really what that was about.
And that argument that I often hear, parroted by student X, the assumption is that, Black people are acting disorderly or improperly in their interactions with the police. And this is the cause. This is what's leading to, the high levels of misconduct, police misconduct with Black people. This is why one Black person is killed by a security guard or a vigilante or a police officer every 28 hours is because something that we're not doing, we're not acting right. And that's some crap. That it's assuming that, there's some type of pervasive tendency in Black culture to not act right. That's some BS. You have people that acquiesce, and some people don't acquiesce or don't kiss ass as much. Some people assert their rights and their talk, and it doesn't matter. Black people, the misconduct is the highest amongst Black people. So I think that's evidence that it has nothing to do with how we're acting when we interact with police.
Hey, Philip Castile. Yeah, Philip Castile, I believe that was his name. I mean, that brother was in total compliance. He's in the back of his car. And again, they fired this guy, not because it was politically, because he did something wrong. Now, I think that he didn't, for whatever reason, some jury found him like not guilty or whatever. But I'm just saying that these are examples of the bottom line is they need to be held accountable. I understand that being a police officer is a tough job. You know what I'm saying? Being in the military, being a firefighter, these are tough jobs. So again, I understand that, and I appreciate the struggle and the exposure that they have. I go to my job every day, and it's every work day, and I'm not facing the type of jeopardy and danger that a cop is facing. You know what I'm saying? So I understand that.
You are, man. That's what I'm saying. I don't want to give any excuse. I know you're not doing that, but man, Black people, we live in dangerous neighborhoods, dangerous environments.
Yes.
Being a Black man is stressful, so I don't want to hear all the with the police. I have a hard job, man.
I'm in my shed doing this show with my gun just because someone could literally hop over this wall, which they have before running from the police. You know what I'm saying? So the bottom line is I understand it, but I'm just saying that when you're in a job that's more dangerous, I understand it. You have my sympathy, but still, right is right is right is right. You still have a responsibility to do the right thing. It's not okay. That dude that didn't just step out of the way of the front of a car and ends up shooting his sister, mostly from the side and from the back. I'm just, that's obviously going beyond not only your training, not only what the law is, but let's just talk about right and wrong. She definitely did not deserve to die about that. And whether she was belligerent, which she really wasn't, you know what I'm saying? That's really not the point. I'm just saying that, look, as people, we should hold ourselves to some degree of accountability to at least our influence. But again, they need to be held accountable. Everybody needs to be held accountable. So, and the reason why I was bringing this up was just talking about the Republican talk about. They said, why don't you just comply? Because I brought it up is because I remember during COVID, I remember seeing white people being dragged off by the police because they couldn't go to the beach without a mask. So again, you're talking about why don't you just comply? They're literally going nuts because they have to wear a mask at the beach.
Yeah, and the data shows, all the misconduct cases, Black people have the most. So the evidence I think is right there. But can you bring up that piece when people the difference in the Republican Congress, the demographics of the Republican Congress and the Democratic congressman?
Okay, so it's not that picture.
That one.
Okay,
Right,
so check this out.
Yeah, I mean, when they say there is no difference between the parties, I mean, just look at the congressional makeup. The congressional makeup of the Democratic and Republican Party in terms of women in Congress: 112 Democrats, 43 Republicans. I mean, to say that there's no difference in terms of racial minorities in the Congress that are Democrats, 126, Republicans only 23. I mean, come on, I think that says a lot. That's reflective in the policies and the values and the interests of the party.
One thing that people got drastically wrong about the whole DEI concept, because it got hijacked. They wanted to make it about the meritocracy. It's about whatever. So DEI was never about putting someone unqualified in a position to do something. It's that you understand that when you have a job opening, there's many people that are qualified, but only one person may get the job, so to speak. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So again, it's just a function of, making sure that people that are very qualified get an opportunity. So when it comes to like representation of maybe, let's say, a board of whatever, or even just like the Congress, the reason why you want people of different, races, different genders, it's just because, again, it's different perspective, because everybody's a citizen. So we're all supposed to have equal rights, but if we don't have equal representation, you know what I'm saying? We're not basically going to get what we need. Sometimes you need a voice at the table that's going to be looking out for your interests. So again, I understand why white people, gravitated to people like Charlie Kirk and stuff like that. I'm not going to co-sign a lot of stuff that he did that I thought was ridiculous, but I felt like, look, he was an advocate for them. And, he said some things that probably needed to be said, and it's okay. It's okay for your voice to be out there. But the bottom line is you need to let other people have a voice out there as well. So, again, I'm not co-signing Charlie Kirk in any way.
I had to check and make sure.
Yeah. Okay. Let's be very clear about that. Okay. I don't think he should have been assassinated. But, again, don't ask me about him unless you want me to say terrible things about him. That's
I think, just the reality. Some people have to leave the earth in order for the earth to be a better place. But I think that's facts. But I mean, to people who are anti-DEI, this whole thing, you must have a lot of faith in white people that they're just going to do the right thing. If you look in like the private sector, or even in the public sector, I mean, less in the public sector, more in the private sector, but the majority of people on the hiring teams are white. Why do you think, like, in physics, they have the concept, of inertia, right? If I'm riding my bike real fast and I get up to whatever speed, I no longer have to put any energy into maintaining that speed. It's going to go on its own forever and ever. The only reason it stops is to do the friction and all of that. Like, racism is to the point, the momentum, the snowball effect is so large that you no longer need to openly discriminate against people anymore. It's just nepotism now. I mean, it's more than nepotism, but all you need to do is practice nepotism. White people hire friends and they hire family like anybody else.
That's not a meritocracy.
That is not a meritocracy. It's a racial hierarchy. So how do you combat? Because all the field, so the audience out there knows they have meta-analysis studies. These are studies looking at multitude of other studies, finding common ground. This is the highest level of research. And in those type of meta-analysis research on employment discrimination, it shows that the employment discrimination hasn't changed, I'm saying, in the last 40 years. And that this cost Black people millions of jobs per year. So the question is, how do you combat that? And I guess the Republican or the right wing is to do nothing. Don't acknowledge it, and it'll just go away. That's just benign neglect. That's garbage. Yeah, you have to implement the DEI stuff. Unless you have faith that white people are just going to do the right thing for some reason. You got a lot of faith in white people.
It's the reason why you have all these rules and regulations as far as, the food industry, all of this stuff. Nothing's just going, if you just allow people in power just to do whatever they want, the right thing is not just going to play out. You're going to have checks and balances. You're going to actually have to follow the progress. You're going to have to chart the progress. You're going to have to deduce what the issue is and what the factors are. I mean, I'm a big fan of Bruce Lee. And I remember, he wasn't just a concept of just like, you need to work out. He had like specific goals, like I'm going to do this. I mean, he had a breakdown about his plan and stuff like that. Because again, if you don't have a specific plan, you're just hoping on just whatever, you know what I'm saying? But if you have something that you specifically have laid out and you follow up and see that you're not doing it, that's also motivation. But again, that shows you and demonstrates what's being done and how it's actually impacting you. That's empirical data. It
demonstrates the will too, the political will to, these things are not just done in vain. They have measurables. They look at this at the end of the year. Has Black presence? Has there been an increase in diversity? Blah, blah, blah. And like you said, you pointed out, diversity is beneficial. It is. They've shown that the more diverse, different companies are, the better they do. Because again, most of these companies are marketing to a diversity of people.
Exactly.
So when you look at the hierarchy, who control, is very homogenous. You know what I'm saying? So that's, how do you dehomogenize the private industry, the private sector, if you don't have DEI? How do you do it?
Think about the entertainment industry, okay? Think about, you have a show. Now, let's say you have a show where you have these characters, like you have, a Black character or whatever like that, and maybe you want this show to appeal to whatever. But the bottom line is, if you just have a lot of white people with their white experiences trying to basically create dialogue for this Black person, and then this dialogue goes off the rails, you know what I'm saying? This is one of the reasons why Black people will not come to this type of a thing. It's sort of like, shows where you have females, like you need female writers to have influence on what female actors say, dialogue, just because you're going to have more realistic, you know what I'm saying? We think
you need male actors too.
Yeah, but I'm saying that's just exactly that. Yeah, you definitely don't want them to run wild where it's just like whatever, where everybody's all super feely. But I'm just saying that, and again, that's a little
transgender too.
Again, if you have transgender, you probably again we don't necessarily have to put a transgender person in every show. You know what I'm saying? That's the type of stuff that they'll really harp on when you have the tokenism. But what you want to do is have representation, because trans people actually exist. They actually pay taxes. They actually contribute to society. They are our brothers, our sisters, our mothers, our others, just whatever. You know what I'm saying? The bottom line is, at the end of the day, if you are an American citizen and you're paying taxes and you're contributing to society, you should have a seat at the table. That doesn't mean to say that your voice should be as loud as, if you only represent a small portion of the people, that doesn't necessarily mean that you should be able to dictate what the masses do. But again, in democracy, we vote, and that basically will give you what, your representation. So again, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, kind of getting back to that, we see a difference. Well, actually, bipartisan funding of ICE has been about the same. So this is, I guess that's a point too, because when we talk about the differences, we have to kind of put it in the context or the framework of a Venn diagram. There are differences, but there are places where they overlap. We know that both parties acquiesce to AIPAC. We know that both parties are pro-Israel. We know that largely the foreign policy is, I think there's more unity between the parties when it comes to foreign policy. But we know domestic policy, we cannot deny the magnitude of differences. I think a lot of features that we see in today in modern society, we think they were always there. No, those were political victories. You know what I'm saying? These things, they can all be tied down mostly to two different political eras. The New Deal with FDR and LBJ's the Great Society.
Civil rights. Yeah,
the civil that incorporated all the civil rights stuff. So these are, and when you look at Black history as a whole, there was only two periods of time where we had freedom: during Reconstruction, which was like 10 or 11 years, and post-civil rights movement. That's it. So, this whole notion of making America great, which is being, touted by that party, is just hearkening to a time where, come on, that's outside of those small little moments, the small little snapshots.
And they talk about how this sort of like socialism and stuff like that, but a lot of those things came out of like the FDR
Damn.
deal. You know what I'm saying? So it's just it's just this
Minimum
is the
wage was considered socialism. Paid leave was considered socialism. Having the weekend, the 40-hour. People don't know there was at least a 30-year movement called the 40-hour-a-week movement. Y'all think that shit just happened, fell out the sky? It was just companies said, hey, let's limit work to 40. Lunch break. You think, man, come on. These things were fought for. And they happen under democratic regimes. Black people are not stupid. They see this. They benefited from this. Even though they benefited the least, they still benefited. And that's the whole thing. People, DEI, one of the arguments they would use is that white women were the primary benefactors. But shit, white women are the primary benefactors of SNAP. Are you going you want to take SNAP away? So.
Yeah, well, you understand the numbers of this thing. There are more white women. It's just the numbers. You know what I'm saying? So the bottom line is women have been getting a pretty crappy deal with men for a lot of time. So there is need to have some type of balance with how women were treated. You know what I'm saying? So the fact that they're beneficiaries of these, again, I don't care about that. If something benefits me, that's really my main focus. You know what I'm saying? I really don't care if someone else is eating too. Hey, let's both eat. You know what I'm saying?
Well, white people do. They'll get rid of their own resources. And that's the right. They'll get rid of their own resources just to keep people and people of color from benefiting from it.
Yeah. And that's, again, if I would say this to Republicans, if you want to win black people over, just, incorporate policies that will actually serve black people. It's really that simple. It's just, it's not a name. It's not a title. It's none of that. It's actual policy. So, that's what's up. So again,
why didn't they support the civil rights movement? Well, I mean, with the Barry Goldwater and the Southern Switch, they were anti-civil rights movement. They were supporting segregation. I mean,
they didn't want those. They didn't want those black lips on white water fountains. You know what I'm saying? They just, there's just a lot of stuff. They didn't want their black kids. I mean, their white kids. With the black kids and stuff like that is what Biden referred to as a racial jungle. You know what I'm saying? Again, that stuff wasn't too far away from you. A lot of people forget that type of stuff, but that wasn't that long ago.
Tell me, put me up on it. I'm not.
Well, I'm just saying it. I know that there's a viral video that the Republicans loved using this when Biden was still politically relevant, which he no longer is. So it really shouldn't be something to be a talking point. But, there's a video of him talking about when they were talking about integration and stuff like that. And he said something to the effect of, I don't want my kids being in a racial jungle, with the white kids and the black kids. And, I think the context of that was that, you force this situation, there's going to be animosity because kids are terrible. I mean, even in my day in the 80s, when you really much were well beyond the civil rights movement, the 80s were like, you look at 80s movies and there probably was the greatest time for bullies and treating kids bad. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just saying the kids are terrible.
Even like the comedians, it tells you a lot. Even the rap music tells you a lot about the 80s.
Yeah. So I'm just saying that I get it. But my point is that at the end of the day, I don't care about where you start out. I care about where you ended up. I'm never going to hold something against somebody if they show me that they've moved past that. Because again, if we don't give people the opportunity to be redeemed, you know what I'm saying? If we're just condemning, then they have no interest to do anything. We have no interest to compromise. You know what I'm saying? So you need to give people an incentive to compromise. Go ahead.
I think they have to show you have to acknowledge that what you've done in the past. I mean, I can't forgive you if you don't acknowledge. You
got to. Okay. It's the whole thing. You got it. Like I said, to me, when I said you have to demonstrate that you're in a different place. You have to acknowledge. You can't be sitting there, and that's another problem with the Republican Party is that they feel white guilt for what white people did in this country that they didn't do, that other white people did. But they feel so guilty about it that they don't even want to talk in schools. They don't even want to talk about it, even though it's had real impact and real effect on us. You know what I'm saying? When you talk about generational wealth, it's a real thing. I mean, again, I'm a person that, my situation is different. I've had benefits that I benefited from that I know that the next person that maybe looks like me or doesn't look like me didn't have. So, I acknowledge that, hey, I'm not going to just say anybody can do what no. My resources were specific to my personal experience, and they enabled me to do some of the things that I did that have put me in a position that would be far greater than a lot of people that are my peers. So, what I'm saying? I'm not going to sit there and just brush that under the rug. No, we don't all have the same opportunities and assets and resources to just do whatever. And those influence what we can do. You know what I'm saying? So,
And the greatest time in the United States in terms of the least wealth disparity was in the 40s and the 50s. Why? It was due to the change in the tax code by FDR. I can't remember what the threshold, but if you made over $300,000, whatever the threshold was for the top tax, was that just bracket or range or whatever?
Yeah,
tax,
bracket.
Yeah.
Bracket.
Well, anything over that was taxed at 80 cents per dollar that you made over that. And that was the reason why you had the less, the 40s and the 50s is considered by historians to be the golden age in terms of like ability for the average person to buy a house, to buy a car, to live and retire comfortably. Now, even to this day, Gen X folks, we still kind of relying on the baby boomers, you know what I'm saying? And some of the gains, they move at the age that we are now, at their age, they move better. And
just think about that.
Democratic policy.
Just think about that. A lot of these people were able to just be like, I'm going to go get a job and basically be able to go get a house in short order. Mm-hmm. I mean, how many people are so far away from actually getting a house? Like, I live in a house. We have a house. But even I had to take advantage of a first mover, first buyer, first home time, basically a first purchase program. You know what I'm saying? That it was literally a state program or it was a county program where they basically said that, look, check this out. What we'll do is we'll give you a $100,000 loan, no interest. You just pay it back in 20 years. But the bottom line is that brought the house into affordability. You know what I'm saying? So those are the type of programs. Now, in order to take advantage of that program, you have to be within certain financial things. I couldn't qualify for anything like that now. So, you know what I'm saying? But my point is that if you don't have these programs that give people the opportunity to enjoy these basic things that people enjoyed before, you know what I'm saying? That's going to contribute to why things are.
Guy, you were not like indignant about taking that handout from the government?
Oh, my goodness. That's so ridiculous. Man,
not just go get it on your own.
That's a great point. The reality is that look around you. Look at all these banks. Look at all these organizations. Look at these areas, Chinatown, all of this stuff. All of this stuff was subsidized by government money. All of it. We talk about the banks getting bailed out. You know what I'm saying? It's like this whole concept of handouts. This is ridiculous. You know what I'm saying? First of all, I'm a taxpayer. So when my money comes back to me, that's just coming back to me. But at the end of the day, I'm a taxpayer. I contribute to taxes. So, you know what I'm saying? So that's what's up. So, but the bottom line is that, these people are taking advantage of the government. They have lobbyists. They have people who's literally their careers that all you do is go there and put pressure on politicians to basically, to do your interest.
Lobbyists. They tell us, why we don't get involved in the government, don't ask the government for nothing, but they got people whose salary, they get paid, hundreds of $1,000s a year to do just that on behalf of corporations. And we sitting up here, it's just a ridiculous argument that they use when they say that, man. Like, and then they were not considered government handouts when it was the GI Bill, which helped millions. Black people got the least benefit from that. And that would not have worked if it was not for a federal reorganization of the transportation systems. Like all the highways and freeways were built to support home ownership in the suburbs. Suburbanization doesn't just happen like individually. People just find themselves. No, this requires massive coordination by not only the private industry, but the public sector, the government, state government, county, city, all this created the suburbs that you see that they look so nice. And you know, why can't we live like that? Because we didn't get the federal assistance these motherfuckers got.
Yeah, and that's the thing about, and when you talking about that time in the 40s, just so we're clear about, we can't say that that's we talk about the Make America Great Again. We didn't get all those resources.
Hold on, we just say the Make America. He goes back to the Gilded Age. It's pretty much not the 1890s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I'm just saying that, redlining and stuff like that, these things were impedances to Black people not having access to them. Without the Civil Rights Act, which is crazy to hear Black people saying that this, crippled us or held us back. No, I'm shout out to Brother Youssef, because he did. He came at me on a Facebook post and then basically talked about this. And I'm like, brother, I know you ain't falling for that talking point. It's such an insult to our ancestors who went through what they went through, what their lives were before that, as opposed to what their lives were after that. My mother grew up in segregation. You know what I'm saying? Like literally, I was born 3 years after Martin Luther King was assassinated, in the city that he was assassinated. Those times are not that far out. You know what I'm saying? So that's just the reality of it. So I'm just saying that, it's amazing that people are so privileged today, this YouTube generation, and these podcasters.
I don't understand. They what is have you defined, or how do they describe the civil rights? Because people just think that, well, for the first time in U.S. history, discrimination based on race, gender, sex was illegal. It's never been illegal. So, I mean, how do you look at that and say that's no longer legal? I guess because
they say Black people didn't do it on their own. They needed a government watchdog. They needed government to hold their hands, to walk them through to surviving. You know what I'm saying? Just I don't know. It's not rational. There's not a whole lot of incentive.
They need civil rights. I mean, they need the government to help.
This is how I feel about this whole trying to deduce the logic of how the Civil Rights Act hurt us. You know what I'm saying? Is pearls before swine. You know what I'm saying? Because again, I am a person that I'll be the first to admit this. I am Team Malcolm X, not Team Martin Luther King Jr. I had a lot of issues with a lot of things that he basically a lot of policies that he had, because I really felt that he was basically, like, hey, we need to level ourselves up to white people. They need to share. We need to work together and all this other stuff. And I was of the position like, wait. We shouldn't be limiting ourselves to being on their level, because I don't think they're being righteous. We need to be on our level, and we need to be better than what they're doing. So we need to basically, do on our own and blah, blah, blah. But again, that's not saying that you wouldn't take government assistance. That's not to say that you wouldn't be peaceful and work with white people, because again, at the end of the day, we're all people. But I'm just saying that I originally had a lot of issues with Martin Luther King. And I always thought, like, boy, if Malcolm X wouldn't have been the big voice and not Martin Luther King, how would that have played out for us? But at the end of the day, the civil rights was fundamental to all of that. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure that he was a champion of that, because at the end of the day, you need equality just on that level. He talked about the ballot of the bullet. Well, what the hell was he using the ballot for? You know what I'm saying? So I've got to believe at the end of the day, the Civil Rights Act, you're talking about equality, just the opportunity to do what you need to do legally. You know what I'm saying? Because legally, white people could just string you up from a tree and there would be no accountability. You know what I'm saying? But now that whole legality factor, it changes everything. And that's why we're so integrated. That's why you got Black people on TV, you got Black people on other stuff, as opposed to go ahead and check out TV like in the 1950s. You know what I'm saying? It's a big difference. And again, I'm not saying that we've reached the promised land. We got a whole long ways to go. But the bottom line is an insult to our ancestors to act like we ain't gone a far ways from where we were. That's an insult.
Yeah, I don't get it. I used to come from I still come from, a strong Black nationalist perspective on the issue. where we looked at the civil rights movement as watered down. We made some gains, but those gains were watered down. And that is true. So I can agree to that position, but it was still a gain. We still made gains. And also, it was a flank effect. The reason we made those gains is because, the writing was on the wall. When Malcolm left the nation, he started engaging. He started working with SNCC directly. He was at SNCC rallies. SNCC were influenced by him. SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, which is like the strongest representative arm of the civil rights movement, the youth component. And, soon after Malcolm's death, SNCC went from a civil rights organization to a Black nationalist organization. You know what I'm saying? CORE went from a civil rights organization to a Black nationalist organization. A lot of civil rights groups went from civil rights to Black power because they realized the limitations of civil rights. But still, no one will argue reel back those gains or that those gains are not gains. It's in a better position to fight for more as opposed to prior to those acts. I don't understand how you can be.
Well, think about it this. When I think about when Trump says, that the civil rights movement was white people were treated pretty badly. If you look at a pie, a pie chart, and you divide up all the resources, and then if Black people only had this certain section of pie, and then all of a sudden, after the civil rights movement, that section widened out.
Household wealth increased. Go ahead, and other things.
So therefore, in theory, that would mean that the white people lost pie. You know what I'm saying? In theory. So I'm just saying.
Game theory. What they call zero sum game. Like our gain is their loss. Inverse. Yeah.
But the pie grows.
What they had was privilege, though. They lost. Yeah. Their disadvantage, but to them, they said the loss of privilege feels like oppression. So, that's evidence of that.
Just think about it. You had the most. Just think about it. It's one thing to have like rich people, that they're the pinky in the air and driving the Rolls Royce or the fancy whatever car that they had back in the day and stuff. Just how you look down on just poor white trash or whatever, something like that. But even then, poor white trash still had the ability to look down on all Black people. You know what I'm saying? It's just, there's a lot of people that actually find dignity in looking down on other people, which is a terrible thing to do. You know what I'm saying? But the bottom line is, that's why when you have these people on these talk shows, when they're like, white person is the greatest person or whatever, and he's saying it with the dumbest accent available. No type of information, no type of whatever. This person isn't someone that's particularly well versed in science or well versed in medicine. Just basically well versed in hate. You know what I'm saying? Well versed in false history. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like some people. It just that pride serves a purpose, and that purpose.
That pride is necessary for white solidarity, and that's how. So it all goes back to the origin of why the settlers came here in the first place. The thumbnail is this: they came over here to work less and to make more. So the mission was to steal labor and steal land in order to make more by doing less. And when that privilege that they've gained over the generations, when it gets threatened, there's settler solidarity. Is to grab they call it the white backlash. So I agree with you. You're right. White people lost. They lost certain advantages that they had of being. They didn't have to compete with Black people or people of color. Those jobs were always available for them. So that's the essence of it. But white people supporting that type of rhetoric that was bad for white people, because I think that's the truth, and that's why some of the Black people who parrot conservative points are critical of the civil rights movement, because the civil rights movement negatively impacted white people.
No, I'll mess with them good white folks, but yeah, exactly. Well,
and they don't know why they're doing it. They're repeating these points, but the hidden dog whistle message behind all these points, is about white supremacy, whites being dominant. having the advantage, hoarding the resources. That's what it's all. That's what it's been about. That's the foundation of why they came here in the first place.
They got reparations. Slave owners after the Civil War.
Guess who gave it to them? No. The federal government gave them some reparations, but prior to that, guess who gave the slaveholders reparations in D.C.?
Who was that?
Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah.
So he gave reparations. There's the only people who've been given reparations, I mean, outside of Japanese internment camps and some Native Americans here and there, are white people. I mean, I can say so much on that, but man, yeah.
It's just, I mean, but I'm just saying this is the type of stuff. So again, and it serves our interests to work together. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I understand that people grow up with certain biases, certain prejudice. I always say that whatever you emotionally feel, I don't fault you for it. You know what I'm saying? That's just this is the state that you're at. There's nothing that you can do that's just going to magically change where you're at. But I will say that, again, what distinguishes us from wild animals is that we can compartmentalize our intuitions, our emotional outbursts, and be logical and think and go, well, that's not correct. So I'm going to adjust my behavior accordingly. I don't care about how you feel. I care about how you act. I care about the respect that you show. You know what I'm saying? You can feel however the hell you want to feel, but at the end of the day, you know, your behavior, your actions, that's the stuff that I expect you to police, and that's going to give us a functional relationship. We don't have to love each other. At the end of the day, a very controversial hot take for me, I will say this, and I'll always say this. Look, I want people to do good. I want people to survive. I want children to blossom. And I don't care if you hate me. I don't care about none of that stuff. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, I want you to eat. I want you to have clothes. I want you to have social interaction, whatever. I want you to win after a fashion. But it comes up to once you start basically treading on my rights or other people's rights or doing bad things, that's where I'm going to call you at. But at the end of the day, I don't care about that you have this white compound in Alabama that black people aren't able to go to and, you know, whatever. But I would love for you to get some real information and, you know, maybe that would, you know, dispel some of the ridiculous positions you take and the motivations that drive you. But at the end of the day, you know, again, I don't need a kumbaya of heart. I need a kumbaya of actions, and that'll suffice. So that's my position.
Well, homeboy used to say too, man, like we don't have to, you know, like the whole strategy, we can talk about this, the strategy of busing, you know, with integration in mind. Come on. You just bust the resources. Like you busting students here, over here, and there. Nah, and when they tried to do that, what happened? Right in California, what did they come with? Wow, Proposition 13, right? So there was a challenge because they couldn't implement the board. So audience, I know I'm jumping around. The Board of Education, Brown versus Board, can never be really implemented when there's unequal distribution of school wealth. Like you can actually say get all the different the wealth be collected from each district and put it into a county basket or inter-county basket, and then spread it out equally. You know what I'm saying? That's the solution to the inequality in schools. But white people push back on that. They're like, no, I'm not paying for anything that's benefiting, you know what I'm saying, non-white people. They refuse
and you will pay for it one way or the other. It serves your purpose for people to do well, to do good. You talk about crime and stuff like that. We talk about the most influential factors, not your race, it's your circumstances, it's your resources. Yeah. The bottom line is people that have basic things, they don't have the drive to acquire those basic things like the people that don't. Desperation breeds desperation. You know what I'm saying? So again, you know, the people have accountability. I understand that, but you know what's going to influence them something on a massive scale, macrocosm. You won me over. We had this debate before. I conceded it. If you address the problem socially, you'll have a greater chance than basically trying to motivate people just to individually do their part. Because at the end of the day, it comes down to resources. Student X, he brings up a great example when he talks about like in a house where you got all the resources, a cat and a dog, they can be chummy and friends and stuff like that. But once resources get scarce, then basically, the predatory behavior will come out. So at the end of the day, I want everybody to eat. I want everybody to have the ability to work. I want everybody to have the ability to have dignity. I want everybody to show some type of respect to each other. You don't got to agree with everybody. You don't even got to believe in what the next person does. It doesn't matter.
But
just
you know what,
treat them respectful.
What you just said is very almost similar to Governor Huey Newton, the governor of Louisiana, and who was accused of being a socialist, promoting socialism. I think he said every man a meal, something like that. So, co-founder of the Black Panther Party movement, Huey P. Newton, his grandparent or his parents named him Huey P. Newton after Huey Newton, the governor, who was assassinated too, by the way. But the whole notion that a lot of people, they challenge that. They don't believe in that because they believe in capitalism. And they use the unseen hand as an example. President Herbert Hoover, when the shit was fucked up during the Depression, people couldn't eat. He just said, hey, capitalism will work out its own. The invisible hand will solve the problem. And we lost the election. That's why FDR won. You know what I'm saying? Because it required government intervention. And the interventions actually saved capitalism, because capitalism was going to collapse under its own weight, because you cannot, just starve people to death and get, the disparity has to at least be within a certain range. You know what I'm saying? Because if not, you're going to have a revolution on your hands.
Boy, I was about to put this person's comments out there, but yeah, nah.
Oh, throw something up there, man. Throw something up there.
No, I understand.
You got some more pictures too. You wanted to talk about? Did you want to run through some of those, or?
Let me do that. I think that's
or the comments too.
Well, this was the comment. I'm gonna put this
about it, man. You want to laugh too, man?
Okay, well, so this dude says racism was a concept pushed by Zionist communists.
There might be some truth to that.
Well, go ahead, speak on it.
Okay, because
that's not the comment I was thinking about. I was thinking about his name. That was his first comment. But go ahead, let's address this.
Race. Well, let's put it like this: slavery, colonialism, segregation pre-existed before the word racism was invented in the 1930s, and the invention of the word Zionist communist may have had something to do with Zionist communists, because it kind of comes out of fascist Germany. We had to, they came up with this word. Again, this is a word of analysis. This is a word where you see certain types of actions as negative, and you use this singular word to represent that. But I'll emphasize again, slavery existed, colonialism existed, segregation existed before the word racism. So it's not just a concept. These are actions targeted against a group of people. And this happened before Zionism was invented or communism was invented. So
this the comment. You're confusing white and Jewish. I 100% was not. I wasn't making. Yeah, exactly. I was. Again. It's so.
An example of where I did that.
Hey, by the way, I'm gonna give this person shine because type nothing. That's funny. Salute to you. I want to give you your moment. You deserve it. So yeah, but let me
communism is like in the late 19th century, Zionism late 19th century. So what does that have to do with slavery, segregation, and colonialism?
Let's talk about some real differences between like Republicans and Democrats, and this is basically why I would vote one way or the other. When you talk about climate denial and climate policy, when you talk about the president sitting there talking about we're about to have these crazy cold fronts, over like 30 states or 40 states or whatever, what happened to all that global warming? This is a person not understanding how all this stuff impacts that stuff. You know what I'm saying? It's just like I mean, if you just embrace the science, you understand how this one problem, this one defect leads to this other thing. You know what I'm saying? But I mean, you have the situation.
Not even making a causal link between the climate and the lack of regulations, stuff like that. But just on the notion that some people claim that there are no differences between the parties. There's a clear difference when it comes to climate policy. You know, the Republicans are for taking away those safety nets, those regulations, and the Republicans are for deregulating environmental, environmental deregulation and deregulation with those environmental standards, the workplace standards that affect the environment and all that so forth. That's a clear difference. It's undeniable.
Yeah, and then it was what you have.
Whether it's right or wrong is, I mean, you can't say that there's no difference.
So voter right expression or expansion, voter right suppression. I mean, you know,
both have done it, but who's doing it now?
Yeah, exactly. And that's really the key, because we keep saying that there have been switching the hats. You know, it's just like the earth. You know what I'm saying? We're not occupying space that the earth previously occupied. Because we're not just the solar system is not just basically the sun and these planets are moving around it, and there's just, you know, we're moving around the sun and coming back to where we were before. That's not what's going on. The sun itself is basically also going around, you know, the center of the galaxy. So it's a spiral effect. The sun is going, and we're basically going along with it. And at the end of the day, you know, these people change hats, these states change positions. But, you know, we're going to lean into the positions. Like I said, if Republicans want to win over Black people, all you have to do is basically, you know, preach policy that will actually help Black people. And not just because you say it will, but because it actually appeals to Black people, because Black people are actually smart enough to deduce the difference. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, that's the key. So, again, I wanted to make it a point. I'm not going to shit on Republicans. I'm not going to shit on Democrats. I find faults with both of them. I find merit with both of them. But at the end of the day, I'm going to hold you accountable to the things that I believe that are going to impact me and my people the most. That's where I'm going to lean. All this conspiracy talk, all this whatever, none of this stuff matters. For some reason, we got people that sit there and talk about the Democrats, they want to control you, all this whatever. So I go, so are you Republican? No, I'm not a Republican. Wait a second. You know what I'm saying? That's what you're de facto champion of Republican cause. All your talking points are Republican talking points. So what is it? What's going on here? Are you in the closet? Are you in denial? I'm just saying, at the end of the day, it's got to be out these policies. I don't want to get into no super conspiracy stuff. I don't want to get, you know, life is a whole lot simpler than some of y'all make it out to be. You know, so that's kind of the position. I don't know if we wrap it up, place. If you want to, hey, if there's something else you want to touch on, let's speak about it, brother. What's up?
Just and I'm sorry that I'm not quite as prepared, but the last great civil rights march, I think in 66, and I think that's when Kwame Ture, formerly Stokely Carmichael, dropped Black Power in 66 in front of the mass rally when they went from. They went to Jackson, right? I can't remember that's when Medrick Evers got shot and everything, and they went and did that whole thing. But when they finished that march, and it was a big rap, the March Against Fear, that's what it was, the March Against Fear, LBJ co-signed the movement. He said, you know, we shall overcome. That had a great impact on Black people. Then they started to champion civil rights legislation, Civil Rights Acts of 63, the Voters Act of 64, the Civil Rights Act of 65, the Housing Act of 68. That's what won Black people over. Like, it's like, you just going back to what you said, just another example. Black people are not sitting here confused. They see one party doing this and another party not doing this. And then to this day, they see one party trying to implement, even half-heartedly or partially, those gains, trying to set in the structures to maintain those gains half-heartedly, because I criticize the Democratic Party too. But then you see one party, it's like
wholeheartedly
trying to roll it back.
Wholeheartedly trying to pull it back. So again, and you talk about LBJ. This is an important talking point that I had with Brother Youssef. Shout out to Brother Youssef. But I was saying that LBJ had a great impact on us in this country, at least from his policies and stand. But this wasn't a moral path for him. This was a dude who was also a great friend and a great advocate of J. Edgar Hoover, who was absolutely a villain, a foil to our cause, you know what I'm saying, to our people, you know what I'm saying? So my point is that you listen to those, they have audio tapes. You can probably get on the Google and you hear the things that they talk about. And I mean, these people are not necessarily great.
He frequently used the N-word.
Yeah, these aren't great moral people, but at the end of the day, they understood that this scenario was superior to that scenario from a moral standpoint, and at least he pushed us along. You know, at the end of the day, when you're talking about Abraham Lincoln wasn't talking about equality with black people. He was basically just talking about, hey, this is treating them like this is terrible, but hey, I ain't trying to, you know, live with them or work with them or something like that. I'm just saying, you know, even with the whole Michael Vick thing, they don't care about what happens to a dog. Yeah, that's not saying that a dog is the same as a person.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, Abraham Lincoln was not anti-slavery initially. I mean, look at the 13th, not the 13th, but the Emancipation Proclamation. It's a declaration of freedom for slaves in rebellious states only in states that rebelled against the Union. It specifically says that there. And we know out of his own words, he said he favored white people to have dominance over black people. But he was the whole Civil War was a regional thing. And because the different regions of the countries had a different economy. It's kind of like if I share a country and I'm part of a group that we're hunters and gatherers. The other groups are herdsmen. Sooner or later, our different economies are going to conflict. I want more land to graze or to hunt. You want more land for your livestock. You know what I'm saying? It's an economic interest that at some point is going to conflict. And contrary to popular belief, the South was correct. You know what I'm saying? Because the North were trying to do things that were against slavery. That was unconstitutional. Slavery was constitutional. It was the law. So when you were doing things against slavery, you were actually the 13 states, analogous to the 13 colonies that pulled away from the United States, which that unleashed the Civil War. They were going back to the George Washington. They was like, hey, what are you doing? Y'all deviating from where we come from.
This thing in its origin was always coming from a dark and terrible place.
They were the real people.
Yeah, exactly.
Particularly was the new government that we are responsible for. We actually have a moralizing force in this country, making this country more moral and more just because it's in our best interests.
And that's why I said it before on the Focus Up Network. I said the June 14th is not a day for black people to celebrate. That's a day for white people to celebrate that they came that much closer to being civilized people. So that having been said, anything else you want to talk about, or are we going to wrap it up? I was going to say,
the duty of the civilized is to civilize the uncivilized and make the world realize.
That's what's up. So at the end of the day. So again, shout out to Republicans, shout out to the Democrats, shout out to the progressives. At the end of the day, it's we got to work together on policy. We don't care about these labels,
right? Black Republicans, black Democrats. Okay, yeah.
Again, exactly, and Well, there's some people that you can't work with. There's some people you can't save. At the end of the day, you work with what you can work with, and identify what you can't work with, and move away from that. You know what I'm saying? It's like cancer. You got to cut it out. You know what I'm saying? You got to understand what you're dealing with. So that having been said, like, share, subscribe. Thank you for participating. Thank you for all the comments. Whether they're good or bad, just send them to us. And peace out. Thank you very much.